This Gospel is one of the most incredibly comforting and most joyous Gospels of the year that we read. And the reason that it's so comforting and so enjoyable to read is that it's the Gospel that's full of promises that come directly from the mouth of the Lord Himself. And so one of the most beautiful ways that we can live our lives as Christians is to live in the promises of the Lord day by day, claiming them day by day. And that promise the Lord says, He says that in the world you have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. It's a huge, huge promise. It's a promise that the Lord will overcome any tribulation that we have in our life. The basis to understanding this promise, to understand the promise that the Lord will overcome the world for us and the tribulation that we have, lies in firstly understanding the preceding sentence, the sentence that comes before it. And that sentence is that you will have tribulation. The Lord doesn't say maybe you might have tribulation. He doesn't say that some people have tribulation. He very clearly says that you will have tribulation. And so I think that the very first step to understanding this promise is to understand that tribulation is part of the spiritual life of the Christian. You know, for me personally, the most beautiful part of this promise is the wording that the Lord uses. He says, in the world you have tribulation. So naturally, you would expect that the rest of the sentence will say, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the tribulation, because he's mentioned tribulation. But he actually doesn't say that at all. He says, in the world you have tribulation. He doesn't say that be of good cheer because I've overcome the tribulation, but he says be of good cheer because I've overcome the world. The world, not tribulation. Meaning that the world will never be as strong as the Lord. Tribulation is just one part of the world, and the Lord has overcome not only tribulation, but every other aspect of the world that exists in our life. And so when we have that concept in our minds, we begin to realize that there really is no problem in our life that the Lord cannot fix, or the Lord cannot step in and intervene. I'm sure we've all had times in our life when we've stopped and thought, how is the Lord going to fix this? Or how is it possible that any good is going to come out of this situation? I'm sure we've all had times that have been dark in our life, whether someone in your family's been sick, someone in your family died, you've had some sort of disaster at work or in your children or whatever. And you thought that there is no way that this problem is going to be fixed, or there's no way that any good is going to come out of it. But the secret to finding the solution is claiming this promise. Whenever I feel totally and overwhelmed in my life, and I feel that there is no way that this problem will be solved, the remedy for it is to come to the Lord and to beg Him and to claim the promise that He gives us today, that He will overcome the world and the tribulation of the world. Whenever I feel that my son or my daughter has been very far from the church and has turned to a life of crime or a life of violence or a life of drugs or a life that's very far in a relationship that's not good, and I feel that there's no way in the world that my child, my son or my daughter will ever come back to church, then the remedy is to get on my knees and to claim the promise of the Lord today, that He promised that He will overcome the world and we should be of good cheer. If I'm married to an alcoholic, if I'm married to a gambler, if I'm married to someone who has no interest in the church and who's going to corrupt our children, then the only remedy for this is to get on my knees and to beg the Lord and to claim His promise today, to be of good cheer because He will overcome the world as He promised. If someone in my family is sick, if I'm sick, physically or spiritually, and there is no way that there's going to come any physical or spiritual healing from any source, the only way to claim to overcome this sickness is to really get on our knees today and to beg the Lord day and night and to say to Him that we claim Your promise today, and we claim the promise that You will overcome the world. May we lift our hearts as a church, to overcome the tribulations that we have in our life and the problems that we have that we see no clear solution for otherwise, and we beg the Lord that as a church He may come and lift the tribulations from our life, and that He may overcome not only the tribulations in our life, but the entire world, that as He promised. And glory be to His name forever.